Hey, what is up, Rene? I felt like doing a little video review of someone. I just kind of give some live commentary as a playthrough of video, and you've been posting a lot recently, and I thought this video would be good to do some hands through. So I'm just going to play it, and we'll see where we take it.
All right. So here I am with another Sunday session. Going to put about 20-25 minutes into this one. Games have been a little bit reg heavy and a little bit skinny lately, but that's what it is. We got a button limp from this guy. We are going to continue. Do I lead with my fours? I think fours are kind of incentivized to lead here. Sizing's weird in the micro pots.
It makes a lot of sense to just fire out a small bet there. It helps out your overall range when you do have 100% range there, and his equity is it's still like 50% equity on a board like this.
He's going to peel
so having a pair there
of
is really good. Having
hands that beat me.
Essentially,
there's not a lot of worse. I mean, there's a couple of draws out there.
An
maybe.
unblocker to the 3.
It's a micro pot though, so
unblocks a lot of the other board, so you can definitely kind of fire
checks
some bets
back.
out there, and he should be
one of the draws gets
wide
there
for a button open limp or calling wide.
I guess
like
that means that I need to block bet and fold.
I think a curious spot to block. I guess. I mean, kind of hoping for a call from an ace.
Something I've definitely been noticing recently
again in this spot
is that, hey, all of my real wild-ass craziness has been showing up now. Is this a limp? I think it is a limp. Versus the fish. The way that pre-flop boot camp has been working out, I could check raise here, or I could just lead. Multi-way.
This is definitely a lead.
Why don't I just lead?
Yeah. This may be, after seeing how bad that button was and him limping again, I would probably just not complete the small blind. I'd raise out of it and try to isolate instead of going three-way from a hand. This hand here needs a lot of protection anyway.
We're going to size
or it's not that exciting. Like it
let's target a 10
instead of
just
calling out of position.
So we're not going to size up too big. We're just going to target a 10, try and get a 10x to pay us off. All the way down. So 10 next, we'll probably pay off like a $6 bet here. Yeah.
I think turn and river maybe are a little bit small, but as long as you're firing, that's fine.
What pre-flop boot camp has done for me is it's gotten me appropriately tight, because I was obviously way too loose before, and kind of unpredictably aggressive.
Jack 6 is kind of tight. You can probably open that, especially recognizing
with
how
regards
bad
to
the
who hits the flop, though, is
there.
that the tighter players in the regs just end up either staying out of my way or I end up staying out of their way. So there's more 3-bet folds in my range and in their ranges. So consequently, we just don't end up 3-bet pots to the flop very often against the regs. The fish, on the other hand, are in there swinging. And so this is probably a 3-street hand. Why not? So I find myself in deeper waters and in trickier situations with the fish.
I don't recall exactly what fish in a barrel may say there.
Going to have a bunch of draws, a bunch of
10x,
maybe some 5x.
I think 10 high boards are generally supposed to be around
6-7 gets there. And that's kind of the only thing that really gets there.
Can't give you a lot more theory behind that
as
to why.
Up a little bit. I'm going to go to over 16.
I think sizing up on that flop is a better decision against the fish too.
I also find myself in bluffing spots versus the fish a lot more than I find myself in bluffing spots versus regs right now. Again, because fish end up taking too many flops. And also kind of secondarily because I find myself starting to target fish pre-flop more also.
That's where all the money's at.
So this is going to be
80-20.
I don't really need to raise here.
Get all
I'm
the
just
money
going to
from the
check
fish
and see
that
what
you
the hell
can.
happens. Look at that flop, lordy. Do I check raise? Do I lead?
You should lead. You should lead here. You have 4 high.
I'm going to try for a check raise. If he checks back, that's going to suck, but whatever.
Your equity, losing a street here and letting him draw cheaply is not great. He has 4 high. You should just start firing out and building a pot. You're either not going to be able to show down, or you're going to
defended the queen 9,
get a hand that has massive EV by the river. So
our
you
hand
want
is
to build a
incentivized
pot
to bet.
or deny his equity off
He's
the
going to
start.
need to peel a fair amount.
And this is just a showdown. Bottom pair, bottom kicker. You're hoping, I mean, especially when spades get in, that he has some sort of weird ace high.
I think
like
he might
ace
just check
seven.
back and let me win that some amount of the time. Yeah. He's never folding there. So he check calls, checks again. I size up. Not too big. Not usually finding myself
Definitely
in
a good
value
spot to
spots.
barrel
I
again.
find myself with so much air so much of the time. All right, flush gets there. I also improve. I'm basically targeting 9x at this point for value. So when I'm targeting 9x, I'm going to go half pot. Not expecting any bluff raises ever.
It's an interesting spot. I may go smaller or bigger on that river. I'm not entirely sure because it gets so polarized there. Everything gets there. There's a million made hands, and top two pair isn't actually that great.
But all this preamble is to say that,
So I may go
combination
smaller
of
to try
pre-flop
to get a
recap
crying call because his range
fish in
doesn't
a
really have a
barrel
lot of pairs with you having a
and
9 blocker.
Nuffle
Or go much
has
larger,
me
hoping
just
that
in
it
there
induces some sort of like bluff call
swinging
from the same thing too.
versus the fish
Bluff,
and kind of
catch.
versus nobody else. And it's a little bit more variance, especially because I still have to hand read and do all of that. And I've been running into a bunch of spots lately where I'll be running a multi-street bluff versus a fish, and they'll randomly catch river a set or an invisible 2 pair. This isn't open.
That's why that stuff all works.
Which is going to happen
You just got to
sometimes,
embrace
you
that
know what I
variance.
mean?
I
'Cause
mean,
they're gonna be in
they're
there
calling
with
too
hands
wide.
that are
They're
just
not
way too
defending
weak.
well enough. You got to hammer into them, and sometimes obviously
but
they're
it's
just
still
going to be live
it's a
with
ton of
stuff you
fun.
don't really expect. But
That is for sure. He defends.
big picture, you're just
we have
printing
top
money against these
pair.
people.
We're pretty
Which,
incentivized to continue to bet here. I don't think I want to size up too big here either.
It's a good spot for a range bet against this guy. Exploitively, maybe you want to
can
go
just check
bigger
all way
though,
too
just
wide.
because there's going to be a lot of potential
really good card for me.
overcards that he may call with.
Gonna size
It's
up
better to
again.
maybe try to get 2 early
He
bets
could
in
have some better.
that are larger
He could have some better 8x here.
than just
sometimes.
range bet and let him kind
But
of
a lot of
realize
times he's on
lot of
pocket
equity
pairs
out
or
of
diamond
position.
draws or whatever. That's not an amazing card
That's gross.
because several of the draws get there.
People do
and
donk
ace-x
bluff at
gets
this
there,
with missed draws.
And he leads at me. And given how fishy this guy has been to this
he's
point,
been so
I'm gonna
passive
go ahead and believe him.
That it does
Yeah,
probably
right.
makes
And then-
sense to fold
I got
that
donked at.
because you also have a lot of aces
Nuffle
yourself.
o'clock.
He probably has more 6s than
Have
you
to treat this
do
guy with kid
if
gloves
there are
here.
6s out there.
Who knows what the
But
hell
I don't know if he goes
that.
that small for a 6. You could almost
Yeah,
expect you to
fold the
bet that
top
hand
pair in
again
that hand.
with an ace, but maybe he's leading
And
out
he
there
changed directions
either as a
on me
bluff or obviously
on a
so you don't check back on a
four-liner
pair
to the ace.
when he has his ace. So curious spot. I'd definitely be interested to see what he has on
check.
ignition.
He did check call there. We got led into. No, we didn't get led into here. All right, we're gonna bet small again. 30% is what is that? 8.
Jack 7, you should start going pretty big, even though draws got there.
That's a nice turn for us.
And this queens is interesting. You should definitely size
That's
down
pot.
on aces like that for the
what
most
else
part,
got there?
just
I mean,
because
there's
you're hoping to
Drake
get
got
calls. But on the same size with his stack kind of
And
being a
another
little bit
one
more than
in the
pot,
back
he's
door.
almost inclined to like
With
bluff
that said,
catch
we're
you
too strong just to check back.
for any
We're going
size if he's
to
calling
target
anything.
Jack X,
Maybe
which
it's worth
means we're
going
going to
bigger.
bet. Let's say 9.
And
fold
this
to a
is
raise
an interesting
from this
spot
guy.
for value bet. It's a good one
This is
for
gonna
that
bend.
sizing. Curious what he'd have. Probably something like an 8
We flop the gutter.
or don't
Highly
know.
incentivized to check raise down to left. Let's see what this guy had.
something else. You're often targeting. You're saying you're targeting
Aces.
pairs that you already have one of the blockers to, which ranges are just going to be a lot wider than that.
Come in.
Just as a forethought.
Hello. Hello.
After the flop is kind of nothing.
Yeah,
This is an
it'll be okay.
interesting spot to potentially go for a check raise because he's weak, but you don't really have a
Okay.
lot.
Okay.
It's tough for you to really have a kind of a credible hand, but interesting spot to go for that, and you do, and it worked. Nice
Go
hand.
park, kiddo. I'll get you a nap in about 2 minutes, okay? Gotta find a coloring app for the girl. So yeah, we ended up check raising the gut shot
That's a good play because he
on the
capped
left
himself,
before
and then
after the fish checks back flop, which ends
on
up
that
being
turn that bet didn't seem too serious.
good.
You have a little
Lots
bit of a
hands that
credibility
we're happy to
issue
fold,
representing
plus hands
stuff
that he has that will
with the
fold.
2 broadways,
We're
and
gonna
it
have
wasn't a 3-bet
king queen
pot,
here.
but all the same,
10-9's gonna open if we
he
get to
didn't
it.
seem to be very strong either.
Oh, we got a fish in the blind here too. I'm going to size up just a bit with that guy in the big blind. He's playing 45% of hands, and I'm just flopping my world against him over and over again too.
It's amazing flop.
Oh, let's size up here.
It's half pot or bigger. Half pot standard.
I think he might continue pretty
exploitably
wide.
Bigger.
There's lots here for him to continue with.
Good
this is a fish and
recognizing that
barrel
you should size
spot
up there.
where we open fish calls and we flop value on a dynamic board. He called a really big bet there. He's unlikely to be on the case 10, so he's probably got some amount of draws.
It's a curious spot.
Maybe
I mean, if you
some
go
amount of
really
8x.
large here,
We'll see what happens here.
2/3. I think this is maybe
He
a
check calls,
spot where solver is going to
which
have two
tells
sizes
me
or just
if I
one
was
that is like
stronger, if I
around
was
the
on ace 10,
2/3.
I
So
would
I
just
think the
jam here.
2/3 strategy is probably easier to
Um,
play instead of some weird polarization.
He could be
Very
on the
big,
case
very small.
10.
But on this
If he's on a
river,
draw, he's done.
it's a curious spot
If
too.
he's on 8x, he's only going to
If
call
it's gonna be
small.
One or two sizes.
So
I think
we'll go
sizing
small.
down like that does make sense to get maybe some crying calls from like
I
an
feel
8.
happy about how that hand went.
But obviously, if
you
he's
had.
in some sort of bluff catching mode, maybe you just go bigger anyway, and it doesn't really matter. And the king is good for you as
He
a bluff
had a
catch.
diamond draw with the king and got the king at the end.
Or in case you go bigger, yeah, something like that. And he
There we
has,
have that.
king of
That's
diamonds.
how the fish play that hand.
And so he's going to check call there. Obviously, very wide if he's playing all king
Open
X of diamonds
fives,
there. There's a
catches
lot
that
more in that
board
range that you
versus
don't really expect to
relatively
see,
tight
but
player.
then kind of show up.
Means we're going to size up.
So good job. I mean, I think against that fish, you got pretty much all the value that you could
And we're gonna three bet
by
sixes.
recognizing all the betting
Yes, really.
opportunities.
Yes. You got it backwards. Like that. There you go.
Sixes is kind
You're
of a very dicey 3-bet. I don't know. I
Monoboard.
mean, you can't roll
Bunch of nothing,
a
3-bet
3-bet
pots.
bluff
We're
there
gonna
against under the
just
gun all the
try and take
time.
it down.
This flop
He snap calls.
sizing up like that doesn't make a
Turn
lot of
bricks.
sense.
Do we want to run a multi-street
It
bluff
really
here with
doesn't
zero
make a lot of
equity?
sense. Just from solver world,
I don't think we do.
you get the same effect just by going
And the
quarter
reason
pot.
is because
And
he's
his
got
range is
overpairs that
under the
have diamonds
gun,
in 'em.
so
He's got
starting
ace
to
king
condense it
that
so
has a
much
diamond in it,
through
ace
a
queen,
large
that's
polarization
whatever.
bet
That has a
doesn't
diamond
make
in
a
it.
lot of sense. And if
He
you're going to bluff,
sizes
you can
up there,
bluff one and
too.
done, or
Don't.
bluff smaller and
what
cheaper
I'd be picking off at this point?
on the flop and give
would
yourself
be
more
ace king
room
with
to
a
maneuver
diamond.
turn and river.
Ace, no, not even ace king with a diamond. Ace jack with a diamond. King jack with a diamond.
It's a curious spot for him to value bet here. I mean, what does he have? Ace queen kind of thing like that.
There's just not a lot of available bluffs
He doesn't.
that I beat because the queen's out there blocking a lot of his bluffs.
I mean, makes sense
Because you
to
can't
check
have
fold or to
king,
fold there
queen.
against an under the
Well,
gun
I'm not
range. That's
ahead
kind
of
of why that
queen
spot
one.
is weird.
King, queen.
Just because he's under the gun,
Queen,
his
jack, queen,
range is
10.
so condensed there and tight
The queen is
that
just
you
really
could be
problematic for
bluffing,
me picking
but
off
you
a
have to
bluff
give
there.
respect to that range, especially after the large polarization flop bet. It's just going to
Yeah,
contain
I think
a
that's a
lot
good
of
fold.
hands
I'm gonna check
that
that
we're
fold.
just behind no matter what. So that was a curious one. I'd be
Oh,
interested
my-
to see what he has later. I
Hands
mean, the
backwards
best
here.
hand that he should have there is a hand like ace jack suited to diamonds, or like an ace of diamond,
I'll be curious
random
to
queen
see
kind of thing like that.
what the villagers think of that particular fold. That felt like a fold to me. We're gonna check there. We're gonna defend here.
Eight's full, I guess. That could be another one.
We kind of have to check again on the left. Villain opened here. He's got queens in range. So do I. I don't have a lot of backdoor equity. I'm 3 to a straight. That is it. I'm happy if he folds any of his range, but I'm just not in a position to really go
Paired
nuts
boards
here.
like that, you should just
We
apply
checked
pressure
through,
yourself
which
out of
means I need to
position
go ahead
unless you're
and
planning to.
start
Oh, you should
firing
never
here.
check call that. So if you're going to
There
bet,
are
just bet
sevens that
small
might fold,
range
which make me
and
happy.
take it from there.
There's just not a lot of queens in range.
I don't think it makes a lot of sense to bet
When the
bottom
fish
pair, bottom kicker
peels,
on this board.
He's got a lot of
four-way.
one-pair hands. He's
The
probably got a bunch of
MDF
draws,
is just
too.
guaranteed. You're almost going to certainly
And
get a
he's
call.
more likely to check
And then
back
on
his
the river,
draws
you're
than
going to have to
not.
make either a bluff
So I'm gonna
catching
check
decision
and win
or
sometimes.
like maybe they hit their draws.
And lose sometimes. King, queen, suited.
Even if he checks back a queen like that, exactly, like he could have a queen,
With
or
this
the
guy-
king
oh, the
changes the
ISO,
board
right.
completely, and you don't know
The
if the
ISO
king
went
helped
flat.
anyone.
Means
So
need
I
to
think
put it
firing out that
to
turn is
5x,
definitely a
let's go
mistake.
25. It's just a very aggressive formation, even though this guy is not particularly aggressive.
That's a huge three
If I
bet
can get
size.
through him, I'm going to
I
get
don't
through a lot
know.
because that guy's just going to go
Holy
away.
crap!
Boom. Oh, he didn't go away. So he calls a big-ass raise. Flops air. I think I can get him down with a relatively small bet. So we're going to go a third. A little over a third. And if he continues, then I'm obviously way down with the hand. Ace 7 is... Oh, it would be an ISO.
That's tough.
Snap fold.
That's a tough spot.
Is that an ISO versus a $5
I think you
open?
3-bet way too large there.
What the fuck
Just
is
way too large.
$5 for?
And I guess you have to c-bet there for
Obviously,
third
folding's not
range
wrong.
because it's the best opportunity to win the hand. And you don't want to check and give him initiative, really. But it's almost like when your flop bluff loses like that,
versus a
he's
$5 open.
probably
What the hell's even going
going
on
to
there?
go with it on the flop with an SPR of like 1.5.
4 hands into his match here.
I don't know.
Prudence, better part of valor, I suppose.
I think you can just squeeze smaller there in the future.
Got an open limper. I'm marking both of you fools as fish. This dude might be a maniac. Like $5 open there makes more sense.
Yeah, that hurts. I mean, you just gave 45. You gave half your stack, 45 BBs, more or less, to a person, and didn't get the showdown. And SPRs were really
Sizing
low,
up.
and all that like nice winning just kind of got erased in one
Restack.
hand.
Doink, doink. Now he opens to 3.
And I'm wondering if it's even better to just open shove that flop as
I found a coat.
pure bluff balance to a hand, doing that also with like jacks or something, and hoping to apply pressure
figure
and
out which
fold
app
out an
you
ace
want, I'll
high
vote for you.
instead, which you don't block,
I
which
don't
is
know how
nice.
to download apps.
I know. We'll go look for one and I'll find it for you.
What do you mean?
You gotta go in the app store and
I
look for
don't
it.
have one.
I'm about to have to bail and go do technical support here. Probably good a time as any. There was lots of action there. So appreciate all the thoughts and prayers.
All right, that was a good video, Rene. I don't really think. I mean, you hit pretty much all the value bets for the most part, and I don't think I really had too many critical comments on how things could be improved. So I hope whatever I did give you was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed that.